In a first-of-its-kind case, the Texas Supreme Court temporarily blocking 31-year-old Kate Cox from obtaining an emergency abortion. Cox, a mother of two, filed the legal challenge at 20 weeks pregnant. Her doctor saying her fetus has virtually no chance of survival. They warn continuing to carry the pregnancy could jeopardize her health and future fertility.
There's no outcome here, that results in us taking home a healthy baby girl.
After the Texas Supreme Court temporarily blocked a lower court's ruling that would have allowed for Kate Cox to receive the emergency abortion of the non-viable fetus, they later decided, you know what, no, we're just going to block her from doing it permanently. Luckily, Kate Cox decided to travel outside of the state of Texas in order to get the emergency abortion she needed. And it is an incredibly tragic and cruel story and a perfect example of what we've been arguing about in regard to these restrictive abortion laws in various red states. The exceptions for the life of the mother really mean nothing, because what it leads to is a situation in which the mother has to beg the courts to make her case to allow her to get the health care she needs if she is pregnant with a fetus that is putting her life in jeopardy. And that was certainly the case here. Not only was it putting her life in jeopardy, the fetus was non-viable, meaning it was not going to survive. Very unlikely she was gonna give birth to a live baby. And even if she did, the baby would be unlikely to live past a year and would have all sorts of very serious issues that would put her family in a torturous situation, just watching a newborn baby slowly but surely die. Okay, there was a 5% chance of survival for that fetus. And the way that this all went down is unbelievable. So the case, again, involves the 31-year-old woman from the Dallas area. She asked the Center for Reproductive Rights for legal help in obtaining the emergency abortion. She really wanted the baby. She's 20 weeks pregnant. She has 2 other children, happily married, and was devastated to find that the fetus had these issues. So the genetic condition is one that cannot sustain life, as Cox wrote in an op-ed in the Dallas Morning News. Almost all such pregnancies end in miscarriage or stillbirth. According to the Cleveland Clinic, babies who do survive often die prematurely within the first year. Cox's doctor also warned that carrying the pregnancy to term could jeopardize her health and future fertility, which really scared her because she wants to have more kids, including uterine rupture and hysterectomy, according to the lawsuit filed on her behalf. And what's particularly gross about all of this is that when the lower courts had issued their ruling allowing for her to get this emergency abortion, Ken Paxton got involved. Ken Paxton reached out to the hospitals that have admitting privilege in the state of Texas and threatened to prosecute them should they go through with the abortion. And then the state's Supreme Court got involved and eventually blocked it. But luckily, she made a decision before the Supreme Court handed down their final ruling to travel outside of the state and get the abortion she needed.
Okay, so in one point in the proceedings, Texas said the physicians should just decide on their own what procedure they're going to do, and then we'll adjudicate it later. Well, the doctors are reluctant to do that because do you know what the potential sentence is for violating this law in Texas? A life sentence. Okay, so and as it turned out, they brought it to the courts, and the Texas Supreme Court said no. Brutalize that woman. You are not allowed to help her or save her life. Okay, so if the doctor had performed the abortion in Texas, she might now be serving a life sentence or in jeopardy of serving a life sentence, because that's who these monsters are. Now, I want you to be clear. That is not the voters of Texas. The voters of Texas have made the mistake of putting Republican politicians in, but they never had a ballot measure on this. The state of Texas never voted, and they probably never will vote because the Republicans know that whenever it's gone to a ballot measure in any state, including the most red states there are, Kentucky, Montana, etc., they always lose. Kansas, they lost overwhelmingly because the overwhelming majority of the country is pro-choice. And they do not want the government thugs putting doctors and moms into prisons because they disagreed with their interpretation of a religious text. So the American people and the people of Texas are actually very, very clear, and we've seen the polling. But the Republicans stand in your way and go, no, my religion is more important than your rights. I believe that government should be gigantic. It should prevent doctors from exercising good judgment. And by the way, in another case coming out of Texas, there were 5 women who sued, and one of them couldn't leave the state to get an abortion. So they made her keep the baby, and it caused her permanent physical damage.
In fact, I want to go to her testimony in that case because she talked about what she personally went through as a result of these abortion restrictions in the state of Texas. So it's difficult to hear. I want to give you that warning. Let's watch.
I had to give birth to an identical version of my daughter without a skull and without a brain. And I would have had to hold her until she died.
So that is now going to be a commonality among women who need emergency abortions in the state of Texas, because even when there is a medical necessity for that abortion, even when the woman's life is in jeopardy, even when we're dealing with a non-viable fetus, it is very likely that every branch of government in that state is going to intervene and prevent that woman from getting the reproductive health care she needs. Ken Paxton gets involved, the Attorney General of Texas, the right-wing Supreme Court in the state of Texas gets involved, and they block the ability of this woman, Kate Cox, from being able to get the abortion she needs. It's sick, and it shows you that the exceptions that they make in these restrictive abortion laws really aren't exceptions at all. Because again, you have to prove that you've been raped and the pregnancy was the result of rape. You have to plead your case in front of the courts that your life is in jeopardy due to this non-viable pregnancy. It's really sick.
Okay,
it really
here,
is.
In more details on this particular case. So the Texas is saying you have to keep the baby inside of you until it dies. Now it's going to die inside you in the overwhelming majority of the cases, and the doctors know that, and the judges know that. They're like, we don't care. And that greatly endangers the woman's life because then infections happen, etc. Not only does it endanger their life, but it endangers their ability to have more kids. And this woman is saying, I already have 2 kids, I want more kids. Why do you think I got pregnant? I'm married, I'm trying to have my 3rd baby. And if you do this to me, I might never be able to have a baby again. So this is the pro-life position? No. Now this doesn't have anything to do with life. And we've now shown you hundreds of stories, including Gaza, where babies are being killed left and right, pulled off of incubators because there's no oxygen, there's no power, there's no electricity. And the pro-life movement doesn't care at all. All those dead babies, they couldn't care 1%. They've never done anything about it, they've never protested. And that's not the only story. We've shown you all incredible number of stories where babies' lives are on the line. The pro-life movement never cares, never talks about it. This isn't about babies. This is about how to control women, and they don't like the women's movement, freedom movement. They liked it when women were subjugated, and this is, look here, I'm going to give you one last example here. Unfortunately, the 13th Amendment has a clause that says there's no more slavery unless, of course, or involuntary servitude, unless, of course, someone's in prison, because then you're involuntarily locking them up. And Southern legislators saw that as a loophole. And so what they started doing was imprisoning black men at enormous rates so they could just go back to enslaving them. So the women's suffragette movement, etc., happened, women got rights, and the right-wing men hated that. And they have been trying to battle that this entire time. You know, women have had a right to vote in this country for only 100 years. That's it. It's relatively recent. We had to get an amendment to do that. And so they've been trying to claw it back so that they could go back to being subjugated. So now, you got a baby that's gonna very likely die inside you and cause you permanent damage. We want you to keep that and cause all that damage because we're pro-life, because we care about babies. Yeah, do you? Because it certainly doesn't look like it. Thanks for watching the video, guys. We also love it if you hit the join button below, because that makes you a member, and members allow us to be independent, honest. We can be as progressive as we want, no corporate media influence, and that's all because of you guys. We love doing the show with our members. Hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks.